In Portland's Pearl District, a successful software developer was about to receive a message that would shatter her world. What started as celebrating a promotion took a shocking turn when she faced a desperate plea from her past. Maya Johnson wasn't your typical tech success story. For 5 years, she had rebuilt herself after devastating public humiliation, known for relentless determination. When she encountered Sarah Martinez's Facebook message begging for help, she had no idea. She was walking into a moral crucible. Maya's response would lead to a reckoning with forgiveness itself. What began as notification would become a journey of redemption. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's fingers froze above her laptop keyboard, the LinkedIn promotion announcement half finished on her screen. The Facebook notification had arrived 3 minutes ago, but she'd been staring at it for what felt like hours, her heart hammering against her ribs. Maya, I know this is probably the last thing you want to see, but I don't have anywhere else to turn. I'm homeless. I've lost everything. I know what I did to you in college was unforgivable, but if there's any part of you that might consider helping me, I'm desperate. Please. Sarah Martinez. The name alone was enough to transport Maya back 5 years. To that suffocating basement party where cheap beer and cheaper cologne had mixed with the sound of her own humiliation, echoing off concrete walls. Maya's sleek Portland apartment suddenly felt too quiet. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, seeming to mock her with their view of a city she'd conquered through sheer determination. The champagne bottle she'd bought to celebrate her promotion to senior software engineer sat unopened on her granite countertop, its gold foil catching the late afternoon light. Celebration felt impossible now. She closed her laptop with trembling hands and walked to the window, watching a lone kayaker paddle against the current below. The image felt prophetic, someone fighting upstream, refusing to be carried away by forces beyond their control, just like Maya had done for 5 years. The memory crashed over her without warning. Maya at 23, 40 pounds heavier, wearing clothes from Target that never quite fit right. She'd been struggling through computer science classes at Portland Community College, working nights at a coffee shop to afford textbooks. Sarah had been everything Maya wasn't: pre-med, confident, surrounded by friends who looked like they belonged in magazines. Maya had spent 20 minutes working up the courage, nursing a warm beer while watching Sarah laugh with her circle near the makeshift kitchen bar. Sarah's dark hair had caught the light as she threw her head back, beautiful in that effortless way some people just were. Hey Sarah, Maya's voice had barely carried over the music. I was wondering if maybe you'd want to get coffee sometime. There's this place near campus. The laughter had died instantly. Sarah's friends had gone silent, their conversation halting as they turned to stare at Maya. And Sarah's expression, Maya could still see it perfectly. The way her smile had faltered, then hardened into something cruel and calculated. Coffee? Sarah had repeated, loud enough for others to hear. With you? She'd looked Maya up and down with theatrical disgust, taking her time, making sure everyone could witness the assessment. Listen, I don't know what gave you the idea that I'd be interested, but The pause had stretched until it became unbearable. I don't date losers. The words had hit like a physical blow. Maya remembered. The heat flooding her cheeks, the way her hands had started shaking as laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone had actually pointed. Another person had pulled out their phone, though mercifully no video ever surfaced. Maya had run, pushed through the crowd, ignoring voices calling after her, some mocking, others genuinely concerned. She'd made it to her car before the tears came, sitting in the parking lot with her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. Now standing in her minimalist kitchen with its stainless steel appliances and designer everything, Maya felt that same tremor in her hands. 5 years of therapy, of rebuilding herself from the ground up, of proving she was worth something, and one message could still reduce her to that girl in the parking lot. She picked up her phone, reading Sarah's words again. The timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. during business hours. Maya wondered where Sarah had been when she'd written at a library. maybe. Or one of those computer stations at a community center. Somewhere public, where homeless people could access the internet for free. Homeless Maya tried to reconcile that word with her memory of Sarah Martinez, who'd worn designer clothes like armor and talked about her MCAT scores with casual confidence. The Sarah who'd called her a loser had been destined for medical school, for a life of success and social respect.
Out.
Maya's laptop chimed with a work notification. Her life was full of them now: professional opportunities, social invitations, evidence of a life well lived. The kind of life that 23-year-old Maya could never have imagined. She'd lost the weight through careful diet and obsessive exercise. She'd transferred to Portland State and graduated summa cum laude. She'd landed a job at a startup that got acquired by a tech giant, climbing the corporate ladder with the same determination that had once driven her to spend 18-hour days proving her worth. Maya Johnson, senior software engineer, Maya Johnson, who owned a condo in the Pearl District and drove a Tesla and had a retirement portfolio most people her age could only dream of. Maya Johnson, who was nothing like the girl Sarah Martinez had humiliated. So why did her hands still shake? The city lights began flickering to life beyond her windows, each one representing someone's story, someone's struggle. Maya wondered. How many carried their own versions of that party, their own moments when cruel words had changed everything? She thought about the girl she'd been desperate for acceptance, willing to risk everything for connection. And she thought about the woman she'd become: successful, independent, safe behind walls built from determination and spite. But walls, Maya was learning, were only as strong as their foundations. The message waited for a response. Sarah Martinez. Somewhere in the growing darkness, waiting to see if the girl she'd once destroyed would show mercy. Maya's thumb hovered over the reply button. The cursor blinked, waiting. Maya's thumb hovered over the reply button for another 10 seconds before she set the phone down, unable to bridge the gap between intention and action. The weight of Sarah's message pressed against her chest like a stone, making it hard to breathe in the pristine air of her carefully curated life. She needed to talk to someone, anyone, but who could possibly understand the complexity of this moment? Her fingers found David Kim's contact without conscious thought. David, her best friend, and the social worker who had quite literally saved her life 5 years ago. If anyone could help her navigate this moral minefield, it would be him. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. Maya, perfect timing. I just finished with my last client. How did the promotion meeting go? It went well, Maya said, surprised by how normal her voice sounded. I got it. Senior software engineer, that's incredible. We need to celebrate. I'll grab some of that expensive wine you pretend not to like and... David. Maya's voice cracked slightly. Something happened. I need to talk. The shift in his tone was immediate, professional concern bleeding through personal warmth. What's wrong? Are you okay? Maya walked to her couch, sinking into the soft leather as she stared out at the city lights. I got a message today, from Sarah Martinez. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Maya wondered if the call had dropped. When David finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. Sarah Martinez. The woman from the party. She's homeless, David. She's asking for my help. Another pause. Maya could practically hear David's mind working, processing the implications. As a social worker, he'd seen every permutation of human crisis and redemption. As her friend, he knew exactly what Sarah's cruelty had done to Maya's psyche. How do you feel about that? He asked, slipping into his professional mode. I don't know. Maya's laugh was bitter. Actually, that's not true. I feel everything. Angry, scared, confused. Part of me wants to delete the message and pretend it never happened. Another part of me... She trailed off, unable to articulate the complex emotions churning in her chest. Another part of you wants to help, David finished gently. Is that crazy? After what she did to me? David was quiet for a moment. Maya could hear traffic in the background, the sounds of Portland's evening rush hour. He was probably walking home from the community center where he worked, passing the same streets where Sarah might be sleeping tonight. Maya, in my line of work, I see people at their absolute worst and their potential best every day. The capacity for change, for redemption, it's real, but so is the damage that people can inflict on each other. His voice grew warmer, more personal. What Sarah did to you was cruel and inexcusable. Nothing changes that. But the question isn't whether she deserves forgiveness. The question is whether forgiving her serves you. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. I worked so hard to get past. What happened? I built this whole life, became this whole person. What if helping her undoes all of that? What if it doesn't? Wait, David countered. What if facing this head-on from a position of strength instead of vulnerability actually completes your healing? Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When did you get so wise, Professional Hazard? Listen, you don't have to decide anything tonight. Sleep on it, but Maya. His voice grew serious. Whatever you decide, make sure it's coming from the woman you are now, not the girl you were then. After they hung up, Maya felt marginally steadier but no closer to a decision. She wandered into her kitchen, opening the refrigerator and staring at its organized contents without really seeing them. Everything in her life was like this, carefully planned, meticulously arranged, designed to give her the control she'd lacked 5 years ago. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Emma. Heard about the promotion? So proud of you. Dinner this weekend to celebrate, Emma? If David represented the voice of compassion in Maya's life, Emma was pure protective instinct, 2 years younger but fierce as a mother bear when it came to defending the people she loved. As a nurse, Emma had seen enough human suffering to develop a healthy skepticism about people's capacity for change. Maya typed back, "Definitely. Need to talk to you about something?" The response was immediate. "Everything okay?"
Maya stared at
the question, thumb poised over the screen. How could she explain that her entire world had shifted in the span of a single message? That the woman who had once destroyed her was now asking for salvation? It's complicated. I'll explain this weekend. You're scaring me. Call if you need anything. Love you. Love you too. Maya set the phone aside and opened her laptop, navigating back to Sarah's Facebook profile. The public posts painted a clearer picture now that she was looking for it. The gradual decline was visible in the gaps between posts, the increasingly sparse interactions, the shift from confident updates about medical school to vague messages about new chapters and finding myself. The last public post was from 8 months ago. Sometimes rock bottom becomes the solid foundation on which you rebuild your life. 12 people had liked it. Maya wondered if any of them had actually offered help, or if they'd simply clicked a button and moved on with their lives. She clicked through to Sarah's photos, stopping at one from 4 years ago. Sarah in scrubs, smiling at the camera during what looked like a hospital rotation. She looked tired but hopeful, still recognizable as the confident woman from Maya's memories. Maya closed the laptop before she could see any more. She'd learned enough to understand that Sarah's fall hadn't been sudden. It had been a slow slide, punctuated by moments of hope that ultimately hadn't been enough. The champagne bottle still sat on her counter, a monument to celebration deferred. Maya made a choice that caught even her off guard. She uncorked the bottle, poured a glass, and raised it toward her reflection in the darkened window. "Two complicated choices," she said softly, then took a sip. Tomorrow, she would figure out who Maya Johnson really was. She woke before her alarm, Sarah's message weighing on her like a haunting prayer. Her dream from the night before wasn't about the party's humiliation, but something stranger. In it, she watched herself from above, seeing two versions of who she was, the shattered girl who had fled, and the successful woman she'd grown. In two, they stood apart, separated by a distance that felt both physical and symbolic. Needing to clear her mind, Maya pulled on running gear and hit the pavement. Portland's signature morning fog lingered by the river, hanging low over the familiar path. As she passed the makeshift shelters under the overpasses, the run took on a new gravity. She'd seen these tents before, but today, each one seemed to whisper Sarah's name. By the time she was back home, showered and dressed for work, Maya had made another decision. She couldn't respond to Sarah until she understood what had really happened. Understanding felt safer than reacting research, more comfortable than raw emotion. At her standing desk in the open office of her tech company, Maya typed with her usual precision, though her mind was elsewhere. Between tasks, she dove into a different kind of problem-solving, tracking Sarah online. Sarah had left behind a digital trail. Maya followed it the way she might follow lines of broken code. The story it told was sadly familiar. Sarah had excelled. During her early years in med school honors, research roles, promising potential. Then a car crash during her surgery rotation changed everything. Back injury, prescription painkillers, addiction, a slow descent from recovery to relapse. In a medical journal, Maya stumbled on a small note. Sarah had once been researching addiction medicine. The irony stung. Jake Morrison, her colleague, appeared with 2 coffees. "You look like someone kicked your puppy," he said. "You okay?" She took the coffee, grateful for the gesture. Jake was reliable, if not overly personal, dealing with something from the past. Ex-boyfriend, he guessed. Something. Like that? Her smile was thin. "Can I ask you something?" She added, hypothetically. "If someone who hurt you in the past reached out for help, what would you do?" Jake leaned casually on her desk, thoughtful. "Depends on how bad the hurt was. But me, I'd probably tell them to get lost. Life's too short to waste time on people who've shown you who they are." Maya nodded. Jake's clear-cut logic was tempting, but life, she knew, wasn't so black and white. Later, after lunch, Maya walked the city streets instead of going back to her desk. She needed space freedom from the noise, the notifications, the deadlines. Downtown Portland was alive with motion, tech workers, tourists, and more visibly than ever, the unhoused. At Pioneer Courthouse Square, she paused to watch the tide of humanity flow around her. She noticed a woman in expensive yoga. Clothes veer around a man holding a cardboard sign, uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. Maya knew that feeling. 5 years ago, she might have done the same. But now she looked at the man's face and wondered, who had he been? Who had he wanted to become? Her phone buzzed. It was Emma. "Lunch tomorrow? Can't wait until the weekend to hear about this mysterious thing." Maya replied, "Rain check. Something I need to take care of." Emma's response came quickly. "You're worrying me. This isn't like you." She was right. Maya was usually decisive. But this wasn't just a tough decision. It was something deeper. Something unresolved from long ago. Back at work, Maya couldn't focus. Sarah's last Facebook post echoed in her mind. Sometimes rock bottom becomes the solid foundation on which you rebuild your life. That was 8 months ago. Had Sarah rebuilt anything, or was she still falling? At 4:30, Maya acted again. She needed answers. Real ones. She drove to the Burnside shelter, a former warehouse on Portland's east side, now serving the cities. Homeless, she'd passed it often, but never stopped. The place smelled of sweat, sanitizer, and something harder to name, maybe hopelessness. Inside, people sat quietly at tables. Some read, others simply existed. A few kids played nearby while their parents dealt with paperwork. A woman behind the desk noticed her. Mid-50s, gray ponytail, sharp eyes. "Can I help you?" Maya hesitated. "Looking for someone." "A friend. I think she might have stayed here." The woman's gaze turned cautious. "We don't give out information about clients. It's privacy rules." "I'm not asking for details," Maya said quickly. I'm trying to understand before I respond to her." She reached out. The woman looked Maya over her polished appearance, expensive coat, designer boots. "You with the city? Social services?" "No. I'm a software developer. It's a person who contacted me. We have history. Complicated history." Something in Maya's tone must have resonated because the woman's expression softened slightly. "I'm Michelle Thompson, coordinator here. Been doing this for 12 years. She gestured toward a small office. "Why don't you come sit down? I can't tell you about specific individuals, but maybe I can help you understand what you're dealing with." Michelle's office was cramped but organized, the walls covered with resource lists and success stories. A photo on her desk showed a younger version of herself in graduation robes, smiling next to an older woman who shared her features. "The thing people don't understand about homelessness," Michelle began, settling into her chair, "is how fast it can happen. One crisis, one bad break, and suddenly you're looking at a completely different life. I've seen doctors, lawyers, teachers, people who thought they were immune. What about addiction?" Maya asked. "How does that factor in?" Michelle's laugh was rueful. "Addiction's complicated. Sometimes it's the cause of homelessness. Sometimes it's the result. People think it's about moral weakness, but I've seen addicts who are some of the strongest people I know. I just got dealt a hand that would have broken most folks." Maya thought about Sarah's research into addiction medicine, the irony of studying the disease that would eventually consume her. Do people recover? Really recover? Some do. Not all. Recovery's not a destination. It's a daily choice. And it's harder to make that choice when you're sleeping in doorways and wondering where your next meal's coming from. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the tight knot of anger she'd carried for 5 years. If someone wanted to help someone in that situation, what would be the most useful thing they could do? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Michelle leaned forward, her eyes intent. Depends on the person doing the helping. Are they looking to feel good about themselves? Or are they actually committed to the messy, complicated work of supporting another human being? The question hung in the air between them, sharp and uncompromising. Maya realized she didn't know the answer. Maya left the Burnside shelter with Michelle's business card and a head full of uncomfortable questions. The coordinator's words echoed as she drove through Portland's early evening traffic. Are they looking to feel good about themselves? Or are they actually committed to the messy, complicated work of supporting another human being? The distinction felt crucial, but Maya wasn't sure which category she fell into. Was her impulse to help Sarah genuine compassion, or just another way to prove how far she'd come? The thought made her stomach clench. She pulled into her building's garage and sat in her Tesla for a moment, watching the automatic door close. Behind her, everything in her life was automated, controlled, predictable. Sarah's message had introduced chaos into her carefully ordered world, and Maya wasn't sure she was equipped to handle it. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "How are you holding up? Still thinking about our conversation?" Maya typed back. "Went to a homeless shelter today, learning that nothing about this is simple. Want to talk about it? Making dinner if you want to come over?" Maya considered the offer. David's apartment was the opposite of hers, cluttered, warm, filled with the detritus of a life spent helping others. Photos of former clients who'd turned their lives around, competed for wall space with activist posters and books on social justice. It was the kind of place where difficult conversations happened naturally. My way. David lived in Southeast Portland, in a neighborhood that was gentrifying around him but still retained some of its working-class character. Maya found him in his kitchen, stirring something that smelled like curry and childhood comfort. "Rough day?" he asked, glancing at her face. "Enlightening day." Maya slumped onto his couch, which was covered in the kind of fabric that hid stains and dog hair. "I talked to someone at the Burnside shelter. She asked me a question I can't stop thinking about." David turned down the heat and joined her on the couch. "What kind of question?" "Whether I want to help Sarah, because I care about her, or because helping her would make me feel good about myself." Maya picked at a loose thread on the cushion. "I don't know the answer. Does it matter?" David asked. "If the end result is the same, you tell me? You're the professional do-gooder?" David laughed. "I prefer professional human being. And yes, it matters. Helping someone to make yourself feel better usually backfires. The person you're helping can sense it, and it creates the wrong dynamic from the start." Maya thought about Michelle's warning about the messy, complicated work of actually supporting someone. "So how do you know? How do you know if your motivations are pure?" "They're never pure," David said simply. "We all have mixed motivations. The question is whether you can be honest about them, with yourself, and with the person you're trying to help." Maya's phone buzzed. Emma, calling instead of texting. Maya let it go to voicemail, not ready for her sister's protective instincts. "Have you responded to Sarah yet?" David asked. No, I keep writing responses and deleting them. Maya pulled out her phone, showing David the message thread. Look at this. David read Sarah's message carefully, his expression thoughtful. She's not asking for money specifically. She's asking for help. That could mean a lot of things. Michelle, the woman at the shelter, said that sometimes the best thing you can do is just listen. Let people tell their story without trying to fix everything. Maya paused. I'm not sure I'm ready to hear Sarah's story. What scares you about it? Maya considered the question. I think I'm afraid it'll be too human right now. I can hold on to my anger because Sarah is still the cruel person who humiliated me. But if I learn about her struggles, her pain, her addiction, if I start to understand her as a complete person instead of just the villain in my story. You might have to forgive her, David finished. I might have to forgive her, Maya agreed. And I'm not sure I'm ready. For that, David was quiet for a moment, stirring the curry absently. Can I tell you something? About forgiveness? Maya nodded. I used to think forgiveness was about the other person. Like it was a gift you gave them when they deserved it. But I've learned that forgiveness is really about releasing yourself from the weight of carrying someone else's actions around with you. He looked at her directly. You've been carrying what Sarah did to you for 5 years. It shaped you, motivated you, probably made you stronger in some ways, but it's also been a burden. Forgiveness doesn't mean what she did was okay. It means you're ready to put that burden down. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. What if I put it down and there's nothing left? What if my whole identity is built around overcoming what she did to me? Then you'll find out who Maya Johnson is when she's not defined by someone else's cruelty. David's voice was gentle but firm, and I think you might be surprised by what you discover. This time, it was a voicemail. From Emma, she played it on speaker. Maya, I know you said you'd explain this weekend, but I'm worried. You're being weird and evasive, and that's not like you. Whatever this mysterious thing is, you don't have to handle it alone. Call me back. I love you. David raised an eyebrow. Emma doesn't know about the message? Emma thinks the best response to someone who hurts you is to cut them out of your life completely. She's probably right, but... Maya trailed off. But I keep thinking about what you said yesterday, about making this decision from who I am now, not who I was then. The person I am now has resources, stability, success. Maybe I have enough of those things that I can afford to take a risk on compassion. David smiled. That sounds like growth to me. Maya looked at her phone again, at Sarah's message, waiting for a response. I think I'm ready to write back. What are you going to say? Maya took a deep breath. I'm going to ask her to tell me her story. Then I'm going to listen without trying to fix anything. She paused. At least, I'm going to try. That sounds like a good start, David said, and Maya, whatever you decide after that conversation, it'll be the right decision, because it'll be yours. Maya nodded, feeling something settle in her chest. Not peace exactly, but resolution, whatever came next. She typed, quickly before she could change her mind, Sarah, I got your message. I'd like to hear what happened. You available to meet somewhere tomorrow? She hit send before fear could stop her. Sarah's response came faster than Maya had expected, arriving while she was still sitting on David's couch, staring at her. Phone in mild disbelief that she'd actually sent the message. Yes, thank you. There's a Starbucks on Burnside near 12th. I can be there any time after 10 a.m. I understand if you change your mind. The last sentence hit Maya unexpectedly hard. In asking for help, Sarah was preparing for rejection. Maya wondered how many people had already turned her down, how many doors had closed before Sarah had swallowed her pride enough to reach out to the girl she'd once called a loser. She responded, Maya said, showing David the message. How did you feel? Terrified? Maya admitted, but also relieved. Like I've been holding my breath for 5 years, and I can finally exhale. Maya left David's apartment with a container of leftover curry and a head full of advice about setting boundaries, managing expectations, and protecting her own emotional well-being. She spent the drive home practicing what she might say, but every rehearsed conversation felt inadequate when measured against 5 years of accumulated hurt. Sleep came fitfully. Maya woke at 5:30, unable to lie still any longer. She made coffee and stood at her window, watching Portland wake. Up below, somewhere out there, Sarah was probably awake too, maybe in a shelter bed or a doorway, preparing for a conversation that could change both their lives. Maya arrived at the Starbucks 15 minutes early, choosing a table near the back where they could talk without being overheard. She ordered a latte she didn't want and sat facing the door, her heart rate climbing with each person who entered. At exactly 10 o'clock, Sarah walked in. Maya's first thought was that she almost didn't recognize her. The Sarah from her memories had been vibrant, confident, taking up space with the unconscious authority of someone who belonged everywhere she went. This Sarah moved carefully, as if she wasn't sure she had the right to be anywhere. She was thinner. Then Maya remembered, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that revealed the sharp angles of her cheekbones. Her clothes were clean but worn jeans with frayed hems and a sweater that had seen better years. She carried a backpack that seemed to contain everything she owned. Their eyes met across the cafe, and Maya saw something she'd never expected to see in Sarah Martinez's face: vulnerability. Sarah approached the table slowly, as if Maya might bolt at any moment. "Maya, thank you for agreeing to meet me." "Sit," Maya said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Do you want something to drink?" "I'm fine." Sarah sat carefully, placing her backpack on the floor beside her chair but keeping one strap looped around her ankle. "I know this is probably the last thing you want to be doing." Maya studied Sarah's face, looking for traces of the cruel confidence she remembered. Instead, she saw exhaustion, wariness, and something that might have been shame. "I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure why I'm here. Part of me wants to understand what happened to you. Another part of me thinks I should walk away and never look back." Sarah nodded as if she'd expected as much. "I wouldn't blame you if you did what I did to you at that party was inexcusable. I've thought about it so many times over the years, especially when my own life started falling apart. The universe has a way of teaching you humility." "Tell me what happened," Maya said after college. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her empty coffee cup as if it could anchor her. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I got into OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University, medical school." She looked up at Maya. "It was everything I'd worked for my whole life. My parents were so proud. I was going to be Dr. Sarah Martinez, following in my father's footsteps." Maya remembered Dr. Martinez. Sarah's father was a respected cardiologist in Portland, the kind of man who commanded respect in every room he entered. The pressure Sarah must have felt to live up to that legacy was something Maya could only do imagine. The first 2 years went well. I was in the top 10% of my class, got research opportunities, even published a paper on addiction medicine. Sarah's laugh was bitter. The irony wasn't lost on me later. What changed? Year, surgery rotation. I was working 36-hour shifts, running on caffeine and adrenaline. One night, driving home after a particularly brutal shift, I fell asleep at the wheel. Sarah touched her lower back unconsciously, herniated 2 discs in my lumbar spine. The pain was indescribable. Maya found herself leaning forward, drawn into Sarah's story despite herself. The doctor prescribed OxyContin. "It's just for a few weeks," he said, until the inflammation went down, and it worked. It's not just for the pain, but for everything else. The stress, the anxiety, the constant pressure to be perfect. For the first time in my life, I felt calm. Sarah's voice softened. A few weeks turned into months. When the prescription ended, I found new doctors. When that didn't work anymore, I started buying pills from other students. When that got too expensive, she trailed off, the shame hanging in the silence. Maya finished the sentence quietly. "You started using heroin." Sarah nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "It's cheaper, more reliable. And once you cross that line, once you inject for the first time, you realize just how far you've drifted from who you thought you were around them." The cafe buzzed with life baristas calling out drink orders, professionals chatting about weekend plans. But Maya and Sarah seemed sealed in a bubble, their conversation too raw for the polished setting. "How long did it take?" Maya asked. "From the first pill to losing everything, about 3 years. Addiction dismantles your life with terrifying, Efficiency. I flunked out my third year of med school, got evicted. My parents tried to help at first, but Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Watching your child become a stranger, lying, stealing it, break something in a relationship that's hard to fix. Maya thought about her own parents, how proud they were of her success, how their strained relationship had healed over time. She couldn't imagine the disappointment of watching that success unravel. My brother James cut me off 2 years ago, Sarah added. Said he couldn't support my addiction anymore. He was probably right. Still hurt like hell, having your own family give up on you. It's a kind of rock bottom all on its own. But you're clean now, Maya asked gently, unsure how she even knew to ask. 97 days, Sarah replied, with the steady conviction of someone counting each one. I got into a county program. It's not perfect, but it's something. Housing's still rough. The wait for permanent supportive housing is months. And shelters? She shrugged. You do what you can. What? Felt something inside her shift, a softening of the anger she'd held onto for so long. The Sarah sitting here wasn't the cold, confident girl who had publicly humiliated her. This was someone who had hit bottom and was fighting, inch by inch, to come back. Why me? Maya asked suddenly. Why reach out to me? Sarah looked down at her hands. Because I've apologized to everyone else. My family, friends, professors, people I hurt while I was using. But I never said anything to you about what I did at that party, in recovery. They emphasize amenza, just saying sorry, but truly trying to make things right. She looked up, eyes glassy with unshed tears. I can't undo what I did, calling you a loser in front of all those people. It was cruel, and it said more about me than it ever did about you. But I want you to know, I see things differently now. I see you differently. Maya blinked back tears of her own. How do you see me? Sarah took a breath. I see someone who was brave enough to take a risk, to show up and be vulnerable. I see someone who turned my worst words into motivation to build something incredible. And I see someone who didn't have to meet me here today, but did anyway. That takes strength, her voice faltered. The moment stretched, 5 years of pain and silence finally given shape. Maya felt the tears come, and for once, she didn't. Care who saw? I don't know what comes next, she said quietly. I don't know if I should help, or even how, but I'm listening. I'm not asking you to save me, Sarah replied. Just to see me. As someone who made terrible mistakes, but is trying to do better? If that's all this is, it's more than I deserve. Maya looked at her not as the girl who once shattered her confidence. Not as a symbol of failure or regret, but as a real person. Someone broken but trying, someone human. I see you, Maya, said softly, and I think I'm ready to hear more. They talked for another hour. And with every word, Maya's old narrative about Sarah, the villain of her coming of age, crumbled. What remained was something harder to define, but more honest. The woman across from her was flawed, complicated, and painfully real. By the time they parted, Maya felt emotionally drained, as if she'd run a marathon uphill, but also, strangely, a little lighter. Sarah had given her a phone number for a track phone and promised to stay in touch. Maya had made no commitments beyond agreeing to another conversation, but something fundamental had shifted between them. Driving home, Maya found herself taking a detour past her old community college. The campus looked smaller than she remembered, shabbier. The building where she'd struggled through calculus and programming fundamentals now seemed like a relic from someone else's life. She parked in the lot where she'd once sat crying after Sarah's rejection and tried to reconcile her memories with the woman she'd just left at Starbucks. The cruel confidence she remembered had been armor, Maya realized now. Sarah had been just as insecure and lost as everyone else, just better at hiding it behind designer clothes and cutting remarks. Maya's phone rang as she sat in the parking lot. Emma. Finally, her sister's voice was sharp with worry. I've been trying to reach you all morning. Missed our lunch yesterday. You're being weird and secretive. And I'm about to drive over to your apartment and stage an intervention. I'm fine, Maya said automatically, then reconsidered. Actually, no, I'm not fine. I'm confused and emotionally exhausted, and I don't know what to do with information that changes everything I thought I knew about myself. Okay, that's more honesty than I was expecting. Where are you? Sitting in the parking lot of my old college, having an existential crisis. I'll be right there. Emma, you don't even know where Portland Community College, Southeast Campus. You only go there when you're processing something big. I'll bring coffee. Maya smiled despite herself. Emma knew her better than anyone, sometimes better than she knew herself. 20 minutes later, her sister's Honda pulled up beside Maya's. Tesla. The contrast between their vehicles somehow symbolic of their different approaches to life. Emma had become a nurse because she wanted to help people. Maya had become a software engineer because she wanted to control systems. Emma climbed into Maya's passenger seat, handing over a cup of coffee from Maya's favorite cafe. She was still, in scrubs from her hospital shift, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, exhaustion visible in the lines around her eyes. Okay, Emma said without preamble. Talk. Maya told her everything. The message from Sarah, the conversation at Starbucks, the complicated tangle of emotions she was struggling to sort through. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. Let me get this straight, Emma said when Maya finished. The woman who publicly humiliated you, who called you a loser in front of everyone, who basically triggered your entire personality transformation. She's now homeless and asking for your help. That's the simplified version, yes. And you're considering helping her. I don't know what I'm considering, Maya admitted. I'm just trying to process what I learned today. Emma was quiet for a moment, staring out at the campus where Maya had once been so unhappy. Can I ask you something? And I want you to really think about your answer. Maya nodded. Do you want to help Sarah because you genuinely care about her situation? Or because helping her would prove something about who you've become? The question hit like a physical blow. It was almost identical to what Michelle at the shelter had asked, and Maya still didn't have a good answer. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe both. Maybe it doesn't matter. It matters, Emma said firmly. Because if you're doing this to prove something to yourself, you're setting both of you up for disappointment. Recovery is messy, Maya. People relapse. They make promises they can't keep. They disappoint you even when they're trying their best. Maya looked at her sister, seeing the hard-earned wisdom in her eyes. You've seen this before? I'm a nurse in a public hospital. I see addiction every day. I see people cycling through the ER, promising this time will be different, breaking their families' hearts over and over again. Emma's voice softened. I also see people who actually turn their lives around. But it's never because someone swooped in to save them. It's because they did the work themselves, one day at a time. So you think I shouldn't help her? I think you should be very careful about your motivations and your expectations. Emma turned to face Maya directly. What Sarah did to you was cruel. You don't owe her anything. If you decide to help her, it needs to be because you want to, not because you feel obligated or because you think it'll complete some narrative arc in your life.
Ow.
I keep thinking about something David said, about forgiveness being for me, not for her, about putting down the weight I've been carrying. That's beautiful in theory, Emma said gently. But you can forgive someone without making them your responsibility, can wish someone well without putting yourself at risk. At risk of what? Emma's expression grew protective. The look she'd worn when they were kids and someone threatened to hurt Maya. At risk of being disappointed again? At risk of having your kindness taken advantage of? At risk of being pulled into someone else's chaos? Just when your own life is finally stable? Maya understood the concern. Emma had watched her rebuild herself from nothing after the party incident. She'd seen Maya at her lowest point and supported her through the long climb back to confidence and success. The idea of voluntarily exposing herself to potential harm from the same source must seem insane. What if I can handle it now? Maya asked. What if I'm strong enough to help without being destroyed if it doesn't work out? Then that would be growth, Emma admitted reluctantly. But Maya, please be honest with yourself about what you're really hoping for here. Are you looking for closure? Redemption? The chance to be the bigger person? Because none of those things require you to take on Sarah's problems as your own. Maya stared out at the campus, thinking about the girl she'd been when she'd walked these paths. Insecure, desperate for acceptance, crushed by the opinion of someone who hadn't even really known her. That girl was gone, replaced by someone with resources and stability and the luxury of choice. Maybe, Maya said slowly, I'm looking for the chance to rewrite the ending. 5 years ago, Sarah had all the power and I had none. Now it's reversed. Maybe I want to see what kind of person I am when I have the power to help or hurt someone who once hurt me. Emma was quiet for a long moment. It's either very mature or very dangerous. I'm not sure which. Maybe both, Maya said. Maybe that's what makes it worth doing. Recognizing the stubborn set of Maya's jaw, that meant she'd already made up her mind. If you're going to do this, and I can see that you are, promise me, you'll set boundaries. Don't give her money directly. Don't let her stay at your place. Don't make her problems your problems. I promise, Maya said, meaning it. And promise me you'll talk to David about this. If anyone knows how to help someone without enabling them, it's him. I already am. Emma reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. I love you. I trust your judgment, even when I think you're making things harder for yourself than they need to be. Just be careful, okay? Work too. Hard to get where you are, to let someone else's chaos derail you. Maya squeezed back. I love you too, and I'll be careful. As Emma drove away, Maya sat alone in the parking lot where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. She thought about power and mercy, about second chances and hard-earned wisdom. Tomorrow, she would call Sarah and see what kind of help she actually needed. But tonight, she would call David and figure out how to help without losing herself in the process. Maya called Sarah the next morning, her hand steadier than she'd expected. They arranged to meet at a small diner in Southeast Portland. It's a kind of place where nobody looked twice at mismatched customers and conversations could unfold without judgment. Sarah was already there when Maya arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee that looked like it had been nursing for a while. She'd clearly made an effort. Her hair was washed, her clothes clean, but Maya could see the careful way she'd arranged herself to take up as little space as possible. Thank you for calling, Sarah said as Maya slid into the opposite side of the booth. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, Maya admitted. But I talked to my sister yesterday, and she helped me figure out what I needed to know before we go any further. Sarah's posture tensed slightly, as if preparing for rejection. What do you need to know? Maya studied Sarah's face, looking for signs of the manipulation she'd been warned about. Instead, she saw exhaustion, wariness, and something that looked like genuine hope struggling to stay alive. I need to know what you actually need. Not want, not hope for what you need to stay clean and get back on your feet. Maya kept her voice matter-of-fact. I need to know because I want to help, but I need to help in a way that actually works. Sarah's eyes widened slightly as if she hadn't expected such directness. You want to help me? I think so. I'm not going to give you money, and I'm not going to let you stay at my place. I've been told those are good ways to enable addiction, instead of supporting recovery. Maya felt like she was reading from a script David had helped her write. But if there are other ways to help that would actually make a difference. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with tears. The waiting list for permanent supportive housing is 6 months long, she said finally. I'm staying at the Burnside shelter. Most nights, but they kick everyone out at 7 a.m. and don't let you back in until 6 p.m. So I spend most days at the library or walking around, trying to look busy enough that no one calls the police. Maya thought about her own apartment, empty and climate-controlled during the day while she worked. The contrast was stark enough to be obscene. I need an address for job applications, Sarah continued. A lot of places won't even consider you if you list a shelter. And I need clothes for interviews, professional clothes that don't look like they came from a donation bin. What about treatment? Are you still in a program? Focus on getting interviews. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand why you're being so kind to me. Maya considered the question, one she'd been asking herself since agreeing to this arrangement. Maybe because I can afford to be now. 5 years ago, I couldn't have handled this. I was too hurt, too fragile. But now you're strong enough to help someone who hurt you. Something like that. Maya settled at her laptop in the living room, giving Sarah privacy while remaining close enough to feel secure. I'll be right here if you need anything. For the next 2 hours, Maya worked on code while listening to the sounds of Sarah's job search, typing, clicking, the occasional frustrated sigh. It felt strange having someone else in her space, especially Sarah, but not as uncomfortable as she'd expected. When their time was up, Sarah had applied to 12 positions, 2 restaurants, a grocery store, a cleaning service, 3 retail shops, 2 warehouses, an animal shelter, and a medical supply company that might value her science. Background. This is more progress than I've made in weeks, Sarah said, printing out copies of her applications for her records. Having reliable internet and a quiet space makes such a difference. How do you usually do this? Maya asked. The library. Mostly, but there's a time limit on computer use, and it's hard to concentrate with people waiting behind you. Sarah organized her papers carefully in the folder Maya had provided. Plus, some of the job sites don't work well on the old computers there. Maya thought about her own job search 5 years ago, how she'd had access to her parents' computer and a quiet room to work in. Small advantages that had made a huge difference in her ability to present herself professionally. Same time Thursday? Maya asked. If you're sure you don't mind, I don't mind. After Sarah left, Maya found herself walking through her apartment, seeing it through someone else's eyes. Expensive furniture, the artwork she'd bought, because it looked sophisticated. The kitchen gadgets, she rarely used all of it, suddenly felt excessive. Not wrong exactly, but complicated in ways she'd never considered. She called David that evening to debrief. How did it go? He asked. Better than I expected. She was respectful, grateful, focused on the task. No drama, no manipulation. Maya paused. It felt good to help in a concrete way. That's great. How are you feeling about it? Maya considered the question. Weird. Good weird, but weird. I keep thinking about how different our lives are now and wondering how much of that is choices versus circumstances. What do you mean? I had advantages Sarah didn't have. When I was struggling in college, I had family support, a safe place to live, access to mental health care. When Sarah got injured, she had family pressure, academic stress, and a prescription drug problem that spiraled out of control. Maya walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. I'm not saying she didn't make bad choices, but I had better options when I was struggling. That's pretty profound insight, David said. And it sounds like you're processing this in a healthy way. I think I am. But David, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think people can really change? Like fundamentally change? Who they are? David was quiet for a moment. I think people can change their behaviors, their habits, their responses to situations. Whether that constitutes changing who they are fundamentally, that's a deeper question. Why do you ask? Because I'm not sure if I'm helping Sarah or if I'm helping the person I want Sarah to be. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense, and it's exactly the right question to be asking yourself. Thursday's session went even better than Tuesday's. Sarah arrived with a list of follow-up tasks from her first round of applications and had researched several new positions. She'd also received a callback from one of the restaurants not for a server position, but for prep cook work in the kitchen. It's not glamorous, Sarah said, but it's honest work, and kitchens are good places for people in recovery. Lots of second chances in restaurant work. Maya helped her prepare for the interview, running through common questions and discussing how to address the gap in her employment history honestly, without dwelling on the addiction narrative. Remember, Maya said, you're not defined by your worst moments. You're someone who's rebuilding her life, and that takes strength and commitment. Any employer would be lucky to have someone with that kind of determination. Sarah looked at her with surprise. You really believe that? I'm starting to. The interview went well enough that Sarah was offered a trial shift for the following week. The pay was minimal, barely above minimum wage, but it came with employee meals and the possibility of advancement.
Let's start,
Sarah said when she called Maya with the news. It's something to build on. Over the following weeks, Maya and Sarah settled into their routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays became job search sessions, but they evolved into something more complex. Maya found herself offering advice about workplace dynamics, helping Sarah practice interview skills, even driving her to a few interviews when public transportation schedules didn't align. The restaurant hired Sarah for part-time work. She threw herself into the job with the same intensity she'd once applied to medical school. She was always early, never called in sick, and volunteered for extra shifts whenever possible. "Forgot how good it feels to be useful," Sarah told Maya during one of their sessions. "To have people count on me for something." Maya watched Sarah's confidence grow week by week. The hollow-eyed desperation was being replaced by something steadier, more grounded. Sarah was still fragile. Maya could see the effort it took to maintain her composure, the way she carefully guarded against disappointment, but she was healing. The transformation was affecting Maya too, in ways she hadn't expected. Helping Sarah had given her a different perspective on her own success, a deeper appreciation for the factors that had contributed to her recovery from that night at the party. It had also shown her that forgiveness wasn't a single decision, but an ongoing choice, made fresh each time she chose compassion over resentment. One Thursday in November, Sarah arrived with news that would change everything. "I got approved for permanent supportive housing," she said, her voice shaking with excitement and disbelief. "I move in next week. It's just a studio apartment, but it's mine. I'll have my own address, my own key, my own space." Maya felt tears sprang to her eyes. "Sarah, that's incredible. I know the housing program requires continued sobriety, regular check-ins with a caseworker, and participation in ongoing treatment. But Maya," Sarah's voice broke, "I'm going to have a home." Looking at Sarah's face, radiant with hope and possibility, Maya realized something had shifted permanently between them. The woman sitting across from her wasn't the cruel girl from her memories, but she also wasn't a project or a charity case. She was simply Sarah, complex, flawed, fighting to rebuild her life one day at a time. And Maya was proud to have played a small part in that fight. "You did this," Maya said. "Quietly you put in the work. Showed up every day, made the choices that led to this moment." "We did this," Sarah corrected. "I couldn't have gotten here without your help." Maya smiled, feeling something settle in her chest that she realized was peace. Not the fragile peace of avoiding difficulty, but the deeper peace that came from facing hard things and discovering you were stronger than you knew. "So what happens now?" Maya asked. "Now I keep building," Sarah said. "One day at a time." 3 months after Sarah moved into her studio apartment, Maya received an unexpected phone call. It was a Saturday morning, and she was enjoying her first cup of coffee while reading the news on her tablet. "Maya, it's Sarah. I'm sorry to call so early, but something happened and Sarah's voice was shaky, uncertain. "Could we meet? I need to talk to someone." Maya's first instinct was worry relapse, eviction, some crisis that would undo all the progress Sarah had made. But Sarah's tone didn't sound like desperation. It sounded like confusion mixed with something that might have been hope. They met at their usual coffee shop, the same one where they'd had their first honest conversation months earlier. Sarah looked different, again healthier, more solid somehow. The hollow cheeks had filled out slightly, and there was a steadiness in her posture that spoke of regular meals and adequate sleep. "I got a call yesterday," Sarah said without preamble. "From my brother James." Maya's eyebrows rose. James, the successful attorney who had cut Sarah off completely during her addiction. Maya remembered their brief, uncomfortable meeting months earlier when she'd tried to understand Sarah's family dynamics. "He wants to have lunch," Sarah continued. "He said he'd been thinking about me, wondering how I was doing." "We're sin for someone send I send with service for ice first with soft." Maya studied Sarah's face, looking for signs of how she felt about this development. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted, "but also hopeful. I've been clean for almost 8 months now. I have a job, an apartment, I'm attending meetings regularly. For the first time since my addiction started, I feel like I might actually deserve a second chance." Maya thought about her own relationship with Emma, how her sister's protective love had been both a blessing and a burden during her recovery from the party incident. Family relationships were complicated, even under the best circumstances. "What does your sponsor say?" Maya asked. Sarah had mentioned her NA sponsor, occasionally an older woman named Janet, who had been clean for 15 years. Should be cautious but open, and making amends is part of recovery, but so is protecting my sobriety from relationships that might be toxic. Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, a gesture Maya had learned meant she was processing difficult emotions. The thing is, I don't know which category James falls into anymore. What do you mean? When I was using, James was right to cut me off. I stole from my parents, lied constantly, manipulated everyone who tried to help me. His tough love approach was probably the only sane response. Sarah's voice grew quieter. But now, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not sure he's willing to see that. Maya thought about her own journey, how hard it had been to convince people that she'd changed after her transformation. The difference was that her change had been from victim to success story, a narrative people found easy to celebrate. Sarah's change was from perpetrator to recovery story, which required others to risk being hurt again. Have you talked to your parents about this? Sarah's face clouded. That's complicated. They're willing to have limited contact now, but there's still so much hurt there. They supported me through 2 previous attempts at sobriety, and I disappointed them both times. They're being cautious, which I understand, but which also breaks my heart. Maya felt a familiar stab of guilt about her own family relationships. Her parents had been nothing but supportive during her difficult period, never making her feel like their love was conditional on her success. Maybe James calling is a good sign, Maya said carefully. Maybe it means the family is ready to consider the possibility that you've really changed this time. Or maybe it means his wife is pushing him to reach out. And he'll spend the whole lunch looking for signs that I'm still the person I was. Sarah's laugh was rueful. Recovery is weird, Maya. You spend so much energy rebuilding yourself, and then you have to convince everyone else that the rebuilding is real. They talked for another hour, with Maya helping Sarah think through the lunch meeting, what she hoped for, what she feared, how to protect herself emotionally, regardless of the outcome. It struck Maya how much their relationship had evolved. Sarah was no longer just someone she was helping. She'd become something approaching a friend. As they prepared to leave, Sarah hesitated. Can I ask you something? And feel free to say no. What is it? Would you consider meeting James with me? Not for the whole lunch, just for a few minutes beforehand. I know it's a strange request, but Sarah struggled to find the words. You're the person who's seen me at my worst and believed I could change. If James could see that someone like you so and I hurt was willing to give me a second chance, maybe he'd be more open to it too. Maya felt a flutter of anxiety. Meeting James would mean stepping deeper into Sarah's family drama, taking on a role that went beyond the bounded support she'd been providing. But looking at Sarah's face, she saw not manipulation, but genuine vulnerability. When is the lunch? Maya asked. Next Saturday? 1 o'clock at that restaurant downtown, the one near Pioneer Square. Maya checked her phone calendar. She was free, and Emma was working a double shift, so she wouldn't have to explain the complicated dynamics to her protective sister. Could meet you both for coffee beforehand, Maya said. Somewhere nearby, just for 15 minutes or so. Sarah's face lit up with relief and gratitude. Thank you. I know it's a lot to ask. We'll figure it out, Maya said, surprised by her own certainty. Walking to her car, Maya reflected on how far they'd both come from that desperate Facebook message 8 months earlier. Sarah was rebuilding relationships, taking risks, allowing herself to hope for reconciliation with her family. Maya was learning that healing sometimes required stepping outside your comfort zone repeatedly, choosing trust over self-protection. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Coffee later? Want to hear how things are going with Sarah? Maya typed back. Rain check? I'm apparently becoming a family therapist now. That sounds ominous. Call me later. Right. Maya smiled, starting her car. She'd definitely need to process this new development with David. But first, she had a week to prepare for what might be the most complicated conversation of her life, helping convince Sarah's brother that people could change. While still learning to believe it herself, the lunch meeting would be a test not just of Sarah's recovery, but of whether Maya had truly forgiven the person who had once called her a loser. and whether that forgiveness was strong enough to extend to Sarah's family, who had their own hurt. To overcome. It was going to be an interesting week. The week leading up to the lunch meeting passed in a blur of nervous energy and careful preparation. Maya found herself thinking about family dynamics, second chances, and the weight of other people's expectations. She'd helped Sarah practice potential conversations. But now she was realizing she needed to prepare herself for what might be an emotionally charged encounter. Saturday morning arrived, crisp and clear, the kind of Portland day that made the city feel full of possibility. Maya dressed carefully professional but approachable, successful but not intimidating. She wanted James to see her as someone worthy, of respect, someone whose opinion about his sister might carry weight. They'd arranged to meet at a small cafe, 2 blocks from the restaurant where Sarah would have lunch with James. Maya arrived first, choosing a table near the window where she could see both Sarah and James approaching. Her stomach was tight with anticipation, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was hoping to accomplish. Sarah appeared first, walking with the measured pace of someone trying to manage anxiety. She wore one of the blazers Maya had bought her months earlier, paired with dark jeans and flats. She looked professional, put together, but Maya could see the tension in her shoulders. James arrived 5 minutes later, and Maya recognized him immediately, even though they'd only met briefly. Before, he had Sarah's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones. But where Sarah had learned to carry herself with hard-earned humility, James moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. Maya watched through the window as brother and sister approached each other on the sidewalk. Oh, the greeting was awkward, a brief, stiff hug that spoke of years of hurt and careful boundaries. Maya's heart ached for both of them. When they entered the cafe, Sarah led James to Maya's table. "James, this is Maya Johnson. Maya, my brother James." James extended his hand, his lawyer's training evident in the firm handshake and direct eye contact. "Maya, Sarah's told me you've been helping her get back on her feet?" "Sarah's been doing the work," Maya replied carefully. "I've just provided some logistical support." James studied her for a moment, and Maya could practically see him cataloging details, her expensive watch, her confident posture, the way she spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to professional success. "Sarah mentioned you two knew each other in college," James said, settling into the chair across from her. Maya felt Sarah tense beside her. It agreed that Maya would be honest if asked directly, but they'd hoped to avoid the full story of their history. "We did," Maya said evenly. "We reconnected recently when Sarah reached out. That must have been expected," James said, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. Maya looked at Sarah, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Permission to tell the truth, or at least part of it. It was, Maya admitted. "Sarah and I didn't part on good terms in college. When she contacted me asking for help, I had to think carefully about how to respond." James's eyebrows rose slightly. "And you decided to help anyway?" "I decided to listen first," Maya said. "And then I decided that the person asking for help wasn't the same person I'd known before." "People can change that much?" James's question carried the weight of someone who'd been disappointed too many times to believe in easy transformations. Maya thought about her own journey, about the girl who'd run crying from a party, and the woman who now sat confidently in expensive clothes, discussing second chances with a successful attorney. "I think people can grow," she said carefully. "I think trauma and pain can either break you or teach you things about yourself that you never would have learned otherwise. Sarah's been through hell, but she's done the work to climb back out." "What kind of work?" James asked, his attention now fully focused on Maya. Maya glanced at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "She goes to NA meetings every day. She's been consistently employed for 4 months. She has stable housing and a support network. She's rebuilding her life methodically, not just winging it and hoping for the best. And you've seen this firsthand?" "I have. For the past 6 months, Sarah has used my home office twice a week for job searching and interview preparation. I've watched her apply for dozens of positions, prepare for interviews, handle rejection professionally, and show up consistently even when things were difficult." James was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Maya could see him struggling between his protective instincts and his desire to hope. "Why?" he asked suddenly. "Why would you help someone who—" He trailed off, looking at Sarah. "Someone who hurt me," Maya finished. "Because I had the luxury of being able to help without risking my own stability, and because holding on to anger was taking more energy than letting it go." Sarah spoke for the first time since introductions. "James, I know I broke your trust. I know I disappointed you and Mom and Dad over and over again. I can't undo that, and I don't expect you to forget it, but I can show you that I'm different now, if you're willing to give me the chance." James looked between his sister and Maya, something shifting in his expression. "The baby is due in March," he said quietly. "Alina and I have been talking about what kind of family we want our child to grow up in, whether we want them to know their aunt." "I want to be the kind of aunt they can be proud of," Sarah said, her voice steady, despite the tears in her eyes. "I want to be the kind of person our family can trust again." Maya felt like she was witnessing something sacred, the tentative first steps toward reconciliation between people who loved each other but had been separated by pain and broken promises. "This lunch isn't going to fix everything," James said, but his tone had warmed. "There's a lot of rebuilding to do, and it's going to take time." "I have time," Sarah said simply. "I have the rest of my life to show you who I am now." Shh. James stood up, checking his watch. "We should head to the restaurant. Maya, thank you for this. For helping my sister, and for helping me understand that maybe people really can change." As they prepared to leave, Sarah squeezed Maya's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Maya watched them walk toward the restaurant, brother and sister side by side. Carrying years of hurt but also the possibility of healing, she thought about the message that had started this journey. How Sarah's desperate plea for help had led them both to places they never could have imagined. Sometimes Maya realized the most powerful thing you could do was choose hope over fear, trust over safety, love over the comfortable certainty of old grudges. It was a lesson worth learning, even if it took 5 years and a homeless woman's courage to teach it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.